Hello and welcome to Free Talk with MrB. Welcome back to another day. Last week we were talking about what spouses give back to the world. And so we'll continue the conversation this week as we plan to have 2 weeks of conversation, like bringing up the subject and allowing our guests and our listeners to give us feedback. So the second week we get to expand on the subject some more. So here we are, and I'll turn it over to our moderator as the panel continues. Sameena.
Hi, good morning, good evening, assalamu alaikum. And I wish I knew more languages.
Konnichiwa.
Yes. Thank you very much once again for joining us, all our viewers and our listeners. Yes, once again, I'm delighted to welcome Ms. Dedra Stevens with us, as well as Mr. B on this show. Yes, like we just mentioned, we are going to be continuing talking on how spouses give back to the world. And we are very happy to see that people did listen to our conversation, found it very exciting, and they have sent us some questions. So, without wasting much time, I will just bounce off my first question to both of my speakers today. And starting with Ms. Dedra, the question we received from one of our listeners was that, during the pandemic, the schools have been closed, and parents have been really struggling to see what kind of education, or the best of the education is what every parent wants to give back to the child, and especially when the child is just starting off. And there are these 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds at home, and now messing around the entire house. Some of them are literally making a lot of
Right.
chaos at home. And of course, there could be parents, spouses who are working, both of them. And at that stage, it's very difficult for one to even, or not to stress on this particular subject, that my child was supposed to join the school this year, but I couldn't get him into school because of whatever reasons. So, what's
Right.
the best way that parents can still ensure that they're giving the best of the education to their children in such times?
Well, I'm going to draw a lot on my experience of homeschooling a special needs child. I do have that experience happening now in my home.
Mhm.
Ibrahim is an adult with autism, and he's been educated at home for some time already. Of course, he did have a nice sort of school experience, that he was enjoying before the pandemic. He would go to the Althika Club for special needs, and since they were closed, we'd be more innovative about coming up with things for him to do. And I think that could apply to any kids, really. And I can tell you one thing, with an autistic kid, you really need to remember to make a schedule. And just like them, I think all children crave structure. They crave a schedule. They crave being put on a program, and as you're the parent, you're going to need to kind of lay it down and say, look, get a blackboard up there, a whiteboard, get the markers, get the sticky notes, whatever it is you use, to organize the schedule for your kids, and say, you may not be in school right now, but we're going to be bringing school here to the house. You will be expected to still do some of the activities that you're missing out on in school. In fact, the lessons were, as I understand it, being given online at most schools. So it's their responsibility to have a certain time that homework must be finished, the same as if you were at school. But I would suggest strongly this. I mean, I've always been a big believer in art therapy and creative therapy for children, because children, if they can't go outside to be with other kids and play and get that kind of stimulation, I think that it becomes extra important for them to use their imaginations and to have creative materials
Yes.
around the house. I mean, we always made a point of having paper, paints, pens, colors, markers, whatever it took, to do creative art related activities, because not only does it do a lot for a child's mental and psychological development, it does a lot for them, in terms of managing stress
Yes.
too. I mean, art is a great way to manage stress. Trust me, as a writer, I can tell you one thing. I mean, I don't know how many women my age suffer from loneliness and empty nest syndrome and like that. And I mean, as an author, I have all these wonderful characters that keep me company all the time. I'm never lonely.
Right?
Yes,
So,
I
yeah,
can,
I mean,
yes, I can understand. You're relating and talking to those characters literally when you're
they're
writing.
always here. They're always around, and I'm creating
Yeah.
new ones as we speak. And with each book, new characters come into play. And so the point is that when you use your imagination, loneliness is never a factor. And for
Mhm.
children, I think you can most definitely apply that to their schedule. What do you think, Mr. B? Am I on
Well,
track with that
it's
answer?
in a sense it really is, because we follow the pattern the world and the universe puts before us, but we still have to question what is education and how much and
That's a
how
good
it's
point.
given. I have, when my kids, of course, my youngest is 34 now, and the grandkids are 11 and 15. But when my children were small, we did homeschooling also. And so
Mhm.
education comes in many shapes and many forms. And so as we're talking about what spouses give back to the world, we can see that is indeed something that needs to be given back. We need to not only educate ourselves, but we need to be prepared to educate our children. And so it comes in the form of talking, teaching, giving back time. So the art of giving back talks about that, talks about what do you give back. So when you're thinking about what spouses give back, we give back our time to make sure our
Mhm.
children are well educated. And whatever methods you use, like you said, art, assignments, time, schedules, all of the things, whatever you use, everything necessary to produce these results.
Yes,
Yes.
I agree 100%.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, for children who are just about 4 or 5 years and they have not been able to admit those children in schools, because I can think about India where, there's the situation where parents are still scared to send their children to the schools, though some of them open, some of them are still closed. Parents are very, very scared, and a year has passed and they see that the child is actually not getting what he should have got a year ago in terms of his emotional development, in terms of his skills, in terms of him starting to write or read or whatever it is. So they are really worried and stressed, and I'm sure a lot of spouses feel this way. Um, but yes, both of your inputs are very, very valuable, and I'm sure it will help our listeners also to
Yeah.
kind of think about it and pick up these nuggets and actually take their step forward to kind of do whatever best they can for their children,
You used
of
one
course.
word just now. I'm going to dip in and say this because one of the highest focus items that could have been going on or should have been going on at home is reading. And
Yes.
if it was a
Yes.
3-year old or 4-year old or 40-year old, um, being able to spend time enhancing reading would have been teaching them the world or giving them a tool that would take them very, very far. So even someone did not go to a
Yes.
formal school for 1 year, if they spend a whole year learning quite eloquently how to read
Hmm.
and being able to read all sorts of different levels, that would have been a great educational enhancement.
Oh, I agree with
Absolutely.
you 100%. I have to add to that the mothers are in fact the first teachers of the children. And I think that
Mhm.
mothers need to remember that from the time children are born, it is your responsibility to begin those lessons. And
Yes.
reading, I agree with you 100%, Mr. B. The reading is paramount, I mean, because that is a life skill that should start way before a child enters a classroom. And
Hmm.
try to remember, parents are they're putting so much pressure on themselves about school and marks and grades and all this stuff, you know, and they don't remember that when we went to school, I think my first age of, I think I was 5 when I went to kindergarten, and I was 6 in the first grade, and I didn't miss anything valuable in those years earlier than that. Why are they trying to put them in school so early? It really
Yeah.
isn't fair. You know, let them
Oh,
play and enjoy. And, you know, learning can be fun. I mean, one thing I love about books like Dr. Seuss, for example, is that certain things are made fun. Like all of my children, for example, learn the ABCs from Dr. Seuss's ABC. I mean, it is the most fun
yes.
little book in the world for learning the ABCs.
Oh, yes, we can.
It makes it a
Green eggs
sing
and ham.
song.
Green eggs and ham.
Isn't that wonderful? I mean, learning should be enjoyable when children are that young. You have to keep it fun, keep it like a game, because otherwise they're going to think it's boring and they'll tune out. But if you make it a game, they're going to love it, and they'll always love learning. Then for their whole lives, they'll love learning.
Absolutely. And I think all the parents listening to you right now, Ms. Dedra, when you said that it's okay for them to start school at 5 or even 6, they must be like,
Yeah.
yes, it's okay.
Thank you.
My child actually did not miss anything. I'm okay.
Yeah,
I'm
give
absolutely
yourself a
okay.
break. Don't be
Yes.
so hard on yourself. They put way too much pressure. Oh my God.
Absolutely, absolutely. Great. So, wishing all the parents a very good thing in terms of experience, in terms of giving back to their children at every stage, right from their childhood. We will move on to the other end of our life where, you know, all of us and our families have this situation where our parents at some stage need us. And, you know, one of our other listeners has sent us this question that, you know, spouses have a lot to give each other, but then there's a stage when maybe one of our parents, maybe the husband's parent or the wife's parent, one of them needs us to be there with them and stay with them and handhold them for everything. We don't know, maybe because of an illness or maybe just because of the age factor or whatever it is. But how does what is important for the spouses to understand at this stage and allow whoever it is to be with the parent? This is the question of the listener. So I'd like both of you to just shed a little light on this.
Okay.
And
Do you
I
want me to
guess
go?
I'll go first on this one in the
Okay.
sense that I know there are responsibilities that do come up from that um, aspect, the aspect of giving back when our parents have become older, and the world in many parts of the world has gone away from the responsibility of caring parents. Now, this has been cultural in many parts of the world for a long, long time. So it's just like in some places, like a code of responsibility. In some parts of the West, some people shy that responsibility and try to run away from it. But the art of giving back talks about and brings up these points about what do we give back? What do spouses give back to the world? And that would be a phenomenal way to give back to the world by caring for our aged parents, or even having a sense of concern for that care and using whatever institution necessary to make sure it's still established. Meaning that to make sure that we don't lose this sense of wanting to care for our aged parents, because we will be aged ourselves at some point.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, to just, you know, I mean, I agree 100% with what you said, but to just spin on what the last thing you said, what goes around comes around, you know, I think you have to remember that,
Yes.
that one day we too will be very, very old, you know, and
Yes.
I mean, we can try our very best to stay in the best health and the best mobility and the best mental, you know, facilities and everything, but you never know what's going to happen and what kind of care you'll need when you age.
Yes.
So I think that to model this behavior for your children is a great thing. I mean, as for in my case, we had an example of that even recently. My my husband was pretty much the primary caretaker for my mother-in-law. You know,
Mm-hmm.
for the last 10 years of her life, she had advanced Alzheimer's, and he needed to go there every day. He hired a nurse, you know, to help, you know, with the day-to-day tasks, but I mean, he sort of checked on whether or not her supplies were there. He visited her, you know, and because you know they say that they know that you're there even if they
Yeah.
can't really respond, you know.
Yes.
So, and it was a beautiful thing, you know, to witness him do that. And I I tried to be supportive in that I didn't complain. I didn't try to say, well, you need to spend all the time with me. I don't like you always being over there. I mean, no, I I understood, you know,
Yeah.
when he had to do that. I think that as a spouse, you need to sort of back up your partner when they need to do what they need to do, and realized that he wasn't just doing that for his mom. He was doing that to model it for our children too, so that maybe when we need help later, they'll do the same for us.
You have to throw this question back to the
Yes.
moderator too, because you care for people. As far as me knowing you, you care for people a lot. What about your
Yes.
parents and aged
Yes.
parents?
Of course, of course. I would just like to share that, I did mention that I lost my dad in 2019, but he was paralyzed and he was on bed for 3 years before leaving us. So from 2016 to 2019, we are six daughters, and then my mom, especially, she really, really, we really admire her strength, because even though she was old and she was really struggling herself with her health, she just did her best for that. And we all of us, we took turns to be there with dad, and do whatever we could to help him, because he was definitely not willing to have an external nurse attend him, because he has always been an independent person. And it was very sad for us to see him go through whatever it is, including the bed sores and cleaning up his wounds and everything,
Yeah.
whatever we did. But alhamdulillah, but it made us stronger, definitely. And going back to the same, all goes back to what that taught us to do in our lives. What principles, what everything which they gave us is what let us understand that this is right for us to do it at this moment. So we were there for
Yes.
him and we did what was right for him. And alhamdulillah, we have no regrets that all the six of us, including my sister from the US, she could travel down and all of us could be with him. The doctors actually said that if you could take him off, whatever wires connected in the ICU, he would be there just for about half an hour. So that was a very, very tough decision for us. But we wanted to ease his difficulty also. So we just prayed and we said, okay, fine, we take this decision. We took him home, and it was miraculous that he was there with us for 10 days after that.
Oh,
10 days.
oh,
10 days. And that felt like God gave us a chance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a
yes.
chance, that he knew that right from childhood, dad never let us alone. Everywhere he would go, he would take us. He would never, I don't think I remember him saying that, okay, I'm just going to visit my friend. Nothing like that, because we are from, that part of the world where family values and everything is, of course,
Yeah.
the highest priority. And we've always lived together and always been together with dad and mom, and all being girls, he's very overprotective. He's been very overprotective. Yes, the last minute also, we did have a good time with him, and we have no regrets that we couldn't see him. All of us were with him at the moment when he
I
left
must
us.
say,
Oh,
like, our listeners must be wondering the art of giving back and why this subject. And so we have this subject and subjects like these because these are the realistic and
Yes,
humanitarian type of giving back. Because
yes,
I often say people think that giving back is digging deep into your pockets in order to look for cash or some kind of
yes,
monetary value.
no, it's not that.
Giving back is time. When we get
absolutely.
older and we get sick or something, we wish we had more time. And so these
Hmm.
subjects is what we're covering here, and I'm so pleased that it came up this way. This is what we're covering here. This is what giving back. Now, I tell my children and others, what do parents, it's like me bringing up the question, what do parents really, really want to give back to their children? And what are they expecting, because as parents or as spouses,
Mhm.
male, female, in us giving back to the world, we're saying that we want to be independent, and so that we want to live a way that we don't put burden on our children. And so, Sameena, if you look at it, you might say, you didn't want to burden your father, but he did not leave you alone
Yes,
because he did not want to burden you either. So we don't want to burden our children. We don't want our children
of
to
course.
burden
He
us.
never did.
You
He
know,
never did. Yes.
so I always bring up the perspective that although we always say we want our children to start off their lives and become a member of society, a productive member of society, I think our children wants to look back and say, oh, we don't want mom and dad to be a burden to us. So if mom and dad can take care of themselves, as long as they can by themselves, it makes it easier for those children to grow up. And
Yeah.
so what do spouses give back to the world? Well, we give back as much care as we can for as long as we can. And caring for ourselves as spouses, caring for our mates, caring for our individual self is a way of giving back to the world. That we don't put a burden on society, nor do we put a burden on our children as much as possible.
I love that
Absolutely.
point, Mr. B. Actually, I've said to friends and other women that, we as women, we tend to feel guilty for wanting to have that me time
Yes.
sometimes to go and look after ourselves and eat,
Yeah.
healthier food and go to the gym and exercise and have, swim and, have some time out in the sunshine every day, and it feels like you should be sacrificing and sacrificing, but you know what? That is the most selfless thing you can actually do, is take care of yourself, because you're
Yes.
doing your family no favors by letting yourself become sick
Yes.
and disabled and, poorly and everything. They want you to be healthy and strong
Healthy.
for as long as possible, right?
And
So,
it's a
Totally.
way of giving back.
yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. So it totally isn't selfish. Go look after yourself. Take care of yourself. It's absolutely a good thing to do. And it's not just about you. I mean, I have a disabled kid and I don't know how long I'm going to last, I mean, and I know that as long as I'm here and I'm alive and I'm well, he's fine, and we'll hopefully sort out something for him for when I exit this world, but I'm not just taking care of me for me. You know what I
Right.
mean? Yeah,
Yes.
it's
Exactly.
not
Yes.
just
Yes.
about me. Yeah.
And we encourage everyone to give back that way by taking good care of yourself. Samina?
Yes, sure, definitely. Because we do have a lot of responsibility on us. And it's not just we're living a life alone and a selfish life for our own selves.
Yes.
There's a lot we have to give back. And that is all we can leave back once we're gone. So I think the world would remember us for that. And that's all we need. We don't need to be remembered for the car we drove or for the villa we had or whatever.
Exactly.
Okay. So as we come down in this time frame in our session, and as we record our podcast, we want to encourage our listeners to keep bringing these points in, to keep sending in your comments, whether by email or to any one of us, so we can bring up these subjects, because we have a lot of opportunity to do just that, to talk about ways, realistic and practical ways of giving back. The book, The Art of Giving Back, is what we're feeding off of. And the nuggets in the book, for example, next week we'll be covering, over the next 2 weeks period actually, do we need an intent before giving back? And that question is probably raised all the time. Is it a selfish thing, like we brought up about caring for ourselves? Is it selfish to give back? Is it
Mhm.
selfless to give back? What is the intent? Do we even need an intent? So we look forward to covering or starting to cover that subject next week and the following week. Um, it's just such an honor to have these viewpoints here, Dedra, Sameena, and we're still looking for Mia
Thank
from
you.
South Africa to come on with us. But
Yes.
it's definitely a pleasure that we all can be on. I really appreciate us in our roles. Um,
Well, we appreciate it too. It's an honor to be here with you. And I think this is a great project, and I'm always so excited to be a part of it.
Great. Yes, I've totally enjoyed the last two sessions, and I'm very thrilled that our audience also is sending us topics and questions which we need to take up for. And that's how we can actually give back through this session. And I really hope that
Absolutely.
these nuggets are really helping people to take back
for
some action
sure.
points for themselves. Thank you
And
so much for joining
And
us.
I definitely know that Dedra and Sameena, that we will be able to bring a guest on, maybe subject matter experts and other people who
Mhm.
are focused on some of these giving back topics.
Yes.
And as we go over these nuggets, and we'll keep our panel together, we'll have others come on, and we really, really look forward to all being together doing this. And I encourage other people to podcast also, because those are ways of giving back. Those are ways of keeping the conversation going.
Yes.
Let's be real, and let's keep talking about the art of giving back. I am Mr. B, on Free Talk with Mr. B. I appreciate Dedra and Sameena all being here with me on Free Talk with Mr. B. I look forward to this session again next week when we discuss the intent. Follow us on Instagram. Follow Dedra, Sameena, myself, Free Talk with Mr. B on Instagram. And hello, look forward to it. I'm going to end this one and start another one.
Thank you so much. Take care.